Have you ever considered that maybe, just maybe, as an introvert, you have certain characteristics and personality traits that you can use to your advantage and really harness and hone in order to build and grow your own art business? Have you ever considered that you as an introvert have this mishmash of characteristics that can be incredibly beneficial for any business owner, such as being a good listener, being a deep thinker? A lot of us are also self-motivated when it comes to doing something that we are passionate about. Not to mention, a lot of us are also highly sensitive, which can make us very empathic, which is incredibly helpful when you're trying to provide value for people, which is ultimately what a business owner is trying to do. A book that really helped me reframe my thinking, which I would highly recommend checking out if you're an introvert, is Susan Cain's Quiet: The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. This book helped me see things within myself that I had previously thought of as weaknesses as actual strengths, as a superpower. There is so much science-backed information in that book that is really eye-opening. And we also learn about all of these examples of amazing people throughout history who have changed things for the better that have been introverts. If you're really serious about making an income through your art and your art skills, especially making a consistent, livable income that can sustain you for the long haul, it is incredibly important to understand that your business will only grow as much as you are willing to grow. And I know that many of these things, such as putting your artwork out there, talking about your work, and sharing your thoughts so that people can connect with you as the artist, all of these various things can feel 10 times harder for us introverts than they do for extroverts, who usually really enjoy being the center of attention. Extroverts love talking and they are actually energized by social interactions, whereas a lot of us introverts are the opposite of that. But whatever the case may be, whether the person is an introvert or an extrovert, I really do believe that every single one of us is created with this mishmash of characteristics, with personal strengths and weaknesses, and that every single one of us is made to continue growing and developing as humans, and we're also made to contribute something to the world. At the end of your life, you're not going to regret putting yourself through the growth process if it is connected to something that you're passionate about, and learning to harness your strengths and also find workarounds and tools that will help you move forward even with those weaknesses, because we all have weaknesses, is something that is going to be incredibly valuable and very fulfilling. And if you have the courage to put yourself out of your comfort zone and the grit to keep doing that over time, you just might be surprised with the immense positive impact that you can have on other people's lives and the fulfillment that comes with this. Not to mention, just a few years down the road, you might be surprised to find yourself living the life that you've always wanted to be living. This is exactly what happened to me. When most of us are getting started with our art practice, it's usually something that we're just doing for ourselves, for stress management, for enjoyment, whatever the case may be. But as we move forward, if we're really trying to grow to a professional level and make an income through our work, it's now not only about yourself, it's about providing some sort of value for other people, whether it's inspirational value or educational value or entertainment. All of these are forms of value that you can create for other people via your art and your art skills. Now we have to be a lot more intentional about the message that we want to share through our work and getting feedback from other people to make sure that we are communicating what we're wanting to communicate, and so that we can continue improving and evolving over time. And even though a lot of the work that we do as artists, we do alone in our studios, it's a lot of self-analysis and self-evaluation and just reflection. Basically, all of the critical thinking and problem solving that takes place comes from us and us alone. Once the art is created, at least for those of us who are looking to make an income through our work, we need to share. We need to be comfortable with promoting and with selling and with networking. Because the fact of the matter is that if we don't constantly put ourselves and our work out there and we're just afraid to promote and that kind of thing, no one is ever going to know that we exist. Okay, so how do you do this? How can you start putting yourself out there as a total introvert if you are scared or you simply don't like the idea of putting yourself out there? I'm going to be sharing my top 7 tips that I have implemented myself and have really helped me start and grow a business as a total introvert. But first, I would just like to share a little bit more about myself without going too deep, because I am a very private person and I want to be respectful of my family members and people within my personal life. But I just want to provide a little bit more context about the type of person that I am and my personality. For the longest time in my life, I had zero desire to be a creative entrepreneur of any type. I had zero desire to start a business. I thought that I would be an employee for the rest of my working life. I didn't even know that I had it in me. And it's so sad for me to think of this now, but I was willing to set aside the life that I wanted to be living and be working extremely hard to make other people's dream lives come true. I was willing to ignore my own wants and needs. And I was willing to put up with the high levels of anxiety and the lack of fulfillment and even the depression that came along with the lack of time to devote to my art. I was able to build this from the ground up with zero following online because, as I said, I thought that I would be an employee for the rest of my working life. So what's the point in growing an online audience? I have no other artists or creative business owners in my family. If you ask anyone that knows me, they will probably tell you that I am pretty quiet and reserved as a human, especially from middle school onwards. I was always the quiet kid growing up who was afraid of talking in class and answering the teacher's questions and stuff like that because I was afraid of saying something wrong. I was afraid of stumbling over my words. I was afraid of being disliked by other people. And this, of course, comes from different experiences that I had as a child and growing up, which I'm not going to get into. But needless to say, I was left with quite a few scars and some abandonment issues as well. If you were a quiet kid in school like I was, I would love to know if you also had this experience where teachers and parents tried to change you, try to make you more talkative. This is really unfortunate, I feel, because it makes a lot of us think that there is something wrong with us that we need to change. If you're a teacher or a parent that does this, please stop. Another thing that I've really struggled with throughout my life has been anxiety. Thankfully, nowadays I have formed routines and have these tools and practices that allow me to keep it at bay, but it's still always there. I'm just able to function better today. I've always kind of marched to the beat of my own drum, and I really, really enjoy being alone. I never really had issues sharing my work locally and online, posting on Instagram and sharing my process on YouTube and stuff like that. But talking to the camera like I am right now was terrifying for me in the beginning, and it's still not a very natural thing. And I've kind of accepted at this point that it's never really going to be fully comfortable for me. It does get easier and you do get better at talking to the camera, but it's never really become natural for me. I've always liked being the person behind the scenes, the person taking the photo, right? Not the person in the photo. I've always considered myself a realist. I don't like change very much, and I don't like risk very much, which is probably why I chose to study graphic design instead of liberal arts. I knew that as a graphic designer, it would be much easier for me to find a stable job after finishing with art school. Probably the situations I've been through in life have made me quite pragmatic and practical when it comes to approaching different things. And so I kind of accepted since the beginning that I would have to do things that are not super comfortable for me in order to grow, and also that things would take longer than I would initially want them to. It's all about choosing your hard. I can't remember where I heard that. I wish I did. Staying at that highly demanding, stressful, anxiety-inducing full-time job is incredibly hard. And also starting your business and growing it is incredibly hard. But you need to choose what challenges you are willing to put up with in order to get to that point that you want to get to in life. And of course, to do this, you need to value yourself as a human, understand your own personal wants and needs, and give those wants and needs the importance that they deserve. So now that I've shared a little bit more about myself, I'm going to be providing the practical tips that will help you move forward as a total introvert. Tip number 1, which is the foundation for everything else, is know yourself, know what you want, and know your why. Because this is what's going to provide you that compass moving forward, this understanding that what you're doing is important not only for yourself, but for others. And oftentimes, when you understand that the efforts that you're putting in are not only for yourself, but also for the greater good, you're going to be more willing to step out of your comfort zone and do those challenging things as an introvert. Tip number 2 is take it at your own pace. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Learn to break things down and set small incremental tasks for yourself. This is going to make things a lot less overwhelming and a lot less frustrating, which makes it more likely that you'll keep going. Always start with that lowest hanging fruit, that little next step that is a little bit challenging, but you know that you'll be able to do if you put in the work. Every time that you check off those small tasks, you are building your confidence and you're going to be able to take on more and more challenging things. As an example, if you're afraid of talking to the camera and sharing your face on camera, don't force yourself to do it right off the bat. Create videos where you're only showing your hands and your art. And then maybe you can start creating voiceovers for those videos. And then eventually over time, you can start sharing more and more about yourself. And believe me, I wish that I didn't have to create videos. It's very time consuming, but it's what works. And videos are only going to become more and more important for business owners moving forward. Another little tip for you guys starting out with video content is imagine that you're talking to a friend or you're sharing with someone that you know and like, instead of sharing with a whole group of strangers. And also, don't be afraid to disable comments on YouTube, and using tools that specific platforms provide, such as blocking comments that have little trigger words and things like that. You actually have a lot of control over that kind of thing. And also, if you dislike social media and putting yourself out there online, why not start locally? Put yourself out there in a local way and starting to grow your audience locally. Another thing is, if you're highly sensitive like I am, make sure that you're giving yourself enough time in between demanding tasks. This is going to give you space to decompress and rest. For example, for me, creating videos, especially this kind of video where I created a script for myself and I am kind of performing in a sense, right? It takes a lot of energy. I don't want to finish with this video and right away go into teaching a class or something like that, because by the end of the day, I'm gonna be tapping out. Make sure that you're establishing realistic time frames for yourself and that you are giving yourself these little buffer or rest times to give yourself space to rest and decompress. Take it slow and start with things that feel less intense for you in your particular situation, and be okay with growing slowly. Accept that you're never really going to feel fully ready and that there is no perfect time to start or do anything. What's important is to take imperfect action even when we're scared, even though we don't feel fully ready. Because the only way to become more confident is through taking action, is through doing the thing. Action breeds competence, and competence is what breeds confidence. You cannot expect yourself to feel confident if you just sit there and do nothing. The next tip is for those of you who are interested in participating in art shows and events. Take a friend or a family member with you, at least for a certain amount of time, because those things tend to be very long. And also make sure that you are going prepared. I find it helpful to take snacks to something like that, to make sure that I'm keeping a water bottle with me, staying well hydrated. Another thing that I always make sure to do is after arriving at that given location, I locate the nearest bathroom or area where I can just go and decompress and be alone, because for us introverts, being in a large group of people can be very overwhelming, and depending on the type of event, it's usually several hours or even several days. Making sure that you're well rested so that you can be friendly with people who want to know about your art. Be prepared with a little spiel about your story and your interest and your message that you're trying to communicate through your art, and also how you create your art, that kind of thing, in case anyone asks. For me, being mentally and physically prepared for something like that is essential. Tip number 6 is to shift your perspective on marketing and sales. This is going to be incredibly important. I know that for a lot of us, we see salespeople as icky, as not genuine, but marketing and promoting yourself, it doesn't have to be that way. What you're doing is you're sharing your art, you're sharing a little bit about yourself, you're giving people the opportunity to get to know more about you and your work. And oftentimes, you're also sharing value while you are sharing your work. You're sharing about your process, what you know. You don't ever have to lie or push super aggressively. It's all about being honest and genuine and sharing yourself. Something that I understand now is that marketing as artists is more about making connections and providing value for people. It's not necessarily about making sales and making money. That comes later once you've grown your audience and you have provided enough value for people. The sales come with that. But it's not about being salesy and pushy. It's about making connections. And the last tip that I have for you is to always have 1 or 2 people in mind that you really admire, whether it's an artist or someone else. And if you're ever in a challenging situation, just ask yourself, what would this person do? How would they handle this situation? I find this incredibly helpful, especially when I'm doing something that is more social, where I have to interact directly with other people. Oftentimes, when it comes to doing challenging things, taking on an alter ego is very helpful. This helps you take your mind off your own weaknesses and focus and channel the strengths or the things that you admire about that specific person's personality. It's not about changing yourself or changing your introverted nature or being disingenuous. It's just channeling a little bit of that energy for a certain period of time so that you can do those challenging things. I want to finish up this video by reminding you that being an introvert actually comes with many positive traits that you can use to your advantage to do whatever you want to do in life. Make sure that you're not using your introverted nature as an excuse or something that hinders you from doing the work that you have it in you to do and to make the change in the world that you have it in you to make. If you're an introvert yourself and you could relate to things that I shared, or you have any experiences of your own to share or any questions, go ahead and leave them down below in the comment section. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so very much for joining me in this video. I hope that it was helpful. I wish you tons of luck and enjoyment starting and growing your own art business, and talk to you soon.